and appreciate again everyone taking the time. Very excited to kind of dive in further. And we've actually found there's been a huge uptick in executive use of social, as you can imagine, during these kind of, uncertain times where workplace remote working is really the situation pretty much everyone's in. And so in order to stay top of mind to your network, executive use of social has been on a huge uptick, and engagement is really high. So I think, there is kind of an opportunity for a lot of executives here now to really utilize these channels now more than ever. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and get started. And so last time I'll introduce myself because I know some of you have heard it a few times already, but Mark Reichel, run growth here at Canary, where we focus on executive use of social and building their online presence. And what I'll go through first is a little bit more details on why it's important. Why is executive social media activity important? The first thing to really know here is that everyone, and really every company, has a digital footprint. There is an online presence for pretty much everyone. And the reality of what's happened now is that if you don't have an online presence, or you have a very minimal online presence, it almost even looks suspicious or odd. And there's actually been a huge shift in terms of how people are engaging with people and how these social media algorithms work, which really started several years ago, where various social channels, they started to reduce the amount of reach that brands and company profiles were getting on content, and they started to become much more in favor of connecting people to people. And so what actually happens now is when you share content as an executive and as an individual, the content shared on your personal profiles will tend to receive a significant amount more reach and engagement organically than that of content shared from brand and company channels. The other thing to know is that people really want to follow people. So when you think about the key audiences that you may be looking to reach, whether that's other senior executives or industry talent or relevant media and journalists in the industry, or conference organizers or board members, these kinds of influencers are going to be much more likely to follow you. And what we've also found in the last several years is that an executive's presence actually drives overall business growth. And what happens is when you leverage the key leaders of an organization, we found the organization really benefits significantly from it as well. So executive thought leadership really drives a whole halo effect on the overall organization to shift the perception of the company, showcase the innovation. And again, the kind of audience that's going to follow a senior leader and executive is going to be a much more typically influential and senior audience than that which will just follow company and brand channels. And now I wanted to go into a little bit about some of the thought leadership that we've put out at Canary, because we've actually done studies the last several years to really track the changing landscape and face of executive reputation. And I thought these would be really interesting insights, because in 2019, we put out our white paper, and we'll be doing another one in 2020 later on this year, which I can certainly send to all of you. But we found that there's been a shift in overall executive online reputation and thought leadership in terms of how it drives actual business results. And some of the key things to highlight here is, we did a study of about 500 VP and above executives, and we did a survey with them. And we found that, over 60% of them said that they would be more likely to buy from a company when they followed an executive on social from that company. 2/3 said they'd be more likely to recommend a company or brand when they were following an executive. And 56 stated that they actually felt that an executive's business presence had a positive impact on their overall purchase decision. So the overall highlight here is that executive use of social actually does drive business growth. Some additional stats that I think are really interesting is what we found in our 2019 study was that LinkedIn actually surpassed Google as the primary search site to review colleagues, executives, and industry leaders. Probably no surprise for a lot of you, because I'm sure before and after you meet someone, you're going typically to their LinkedIn, right? And you're looking at their profile, trying to learn more about them. But it's actually the fact that when people look up individuals now, they're going right to LinkedIn versus even just Google first has been a big shift. Also, 75% of the executives that we did the study with said that social media has a big effect and helps their organization's sales growth. This is really huge, because what we found is that, you know, in this kind of current digital time we're in, the way that you nurture your network and stay top of mind, of course, is much different than how things used to be. And especially now with this kind of situation we're in with these remote circumstances, it's extremely important in order to still stay relevant in your industry and stay top of mind and engage with your audience. And when you think about from an overall sales perspective, you know, we find that typically people want to buy from other people, and they'll work with an organization based on the key talent or the people behind the organization. And staying on top of mind of these, your leads or prospects or key influencers is going to be extremely key to help actually drive more business growth to the overall organization. What we've also found is 55% of executives use LinkedIn at least once a week. 80% use LinkedIn to follow professionals and post content and use it for employee advocacy. But also more than 50% of the executives we surveyed are active on Twitter. And Twitter is going to be another really important channel for executive use of social. And I'm going to go through why Twitter is also very important shortly. In addition to that, millennials, the generation that is starting to get into that executive level role and are kind of the new and leaders of the future as well, they're also very highly active on social. And so as you start to think about attracting top talent to your organization and really getting on the radar of the leaders of the future, this is also going to be very important to showcase a modern public image. And so overall, we found that right now, especially with these remote circumstances, social media is really no longer an option for executives. It's a need to have. So let's kind of go through really, really quick, why don't executives do it? What is the barrier to entry? The biggest issue we find is that most executives don't have the time. They're very busy building their businesses, focusing on their job, that they find they don't have the time to be focused on their online presence and social and creating and sharing content and nurturing their online presence and network. They don't know how. They don't know where to start, what to say, and they don't always understand the value. And so let's go through a few reasons why you should do it. What we find happens a lot across the board as we work with our clients and a lot of executives is we find that a lot of executives are industry leaders and they are experts in their field, but their online presence does not reflect it. It kind of showcases an outdated version of themselves, and they're really not leveraging something that can further amplify their thought leadership. And so it's really key to have an active and optimized online presence and social media profiles in order to not just stay top of mind, but to really associate yourself with the topics you want to be known for, and make sure that when people are looking you up, they're seeing the most up-to-date information about you. Also, credibility, driving things like speaking engagements, driving more board opportunities, certainly business development, getting on the radar of media and journalists, and showcasing your expertise through your content and social, and being tapped on to be interviewed or profiled or quoted around the future of your industry. And of course, attracting new roles and opportunities. But also we find that as key leaders of an organization really start to share and content and build their influence in the industry, more and more people also want to work for them. So employee recruitment and retention is a huge effect. Shifting the overall dialogue of your organization. A lot of organizations, they sometimes are not always looked at as digitally innovative or technologically innovative. And so the key executives can help really shift the overall perception of an organization in a very authentic way. And then employee engagement. There's been a lot of studies about how employees are more likely to engage with leaders in their company than just the overall kind of company brand channels. There's a recent one by Weber Shandwick that highlighted that 82% of employees are more likely to reshare and engage with an executive's post on social versus the company or brand's post. And so let's go through a strategy now. How can you actually implement this and get started? Well, the first thing to know is there's 3 key ingredients to an optimized presence. There's owning social, having an optimized, consistent profile on, LinkedIn, on Twitter, and even other key social channels. But then there's also sharing content to stay top of mind, stay relevant, and help really even further associate yourself with key topics. And by doing this, you're going to control your Google search results and control what people find about you when they look you up on search engines, because these social channels index and rank so highly. Now, in terms of getting started, this is something that we do with all of our clients in the way we onboard them. And this is something I would recommend for everyone as you start to think about building your online presence deliberately. First thing you should think about is, what are the 2 to 3 topics you want to be known for? What are, even over the course of the next year, this doesn't have to be that you're locked into these topics forever. The world changes, technology changes, people change. So in the next year, what are the 2 to 3 topics you want to be known for? And make sure that all of your content, your LinkedIn posts, your tweets, your blogs and thought pieces, they all tee up to these 2 to 3 core topics. We call these your content pillars. The reason this is so important is because a lot of executives, we see this constantly, even when they are active on social, they'll tend to post about so many different things that nobody really knows what they're known for. And it's really important because in order to build influence and thought leadership and association and authority quickly, you need to have focus. And so really recommend taking some time and writing down and figuring out what are those 2 to 3 topics you want to be known for. This is, again, something we do with our clients, and all of your content should really tee up to these key topics. Now let's talk a little bit about what are the key channels that you should actually be utilizing, because there's a lot of social media channels out there. What we recommend for most executives is that you choose 2 to 3 core channels to activate on with consistent content and thought leadership and really build a large and engaged audience. Now, there's other sites that you might want to have an optimized profile on, because those other sites will still rank well in Google and it's more owned and controlled content out there about you. But these 3 sites, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Medium, these are the key ones we recommend for that consistent use. LinkedIn, I think for obvious reasons, most executives at this point will typically have a LinkedIn. A lot of times it's not optimized at all, but of course it's the preferred channel for executives and business leaders. Employers are going to look you up on LinkedIn. People that you are doing, clients, people that you are hiring, people you're recruiting are going to look you up on LinkedIn. LinkedIn's very important. But then there's also Twitter. And the reason I recommend Twitter as a key channel for a lot of executives is Twitter is the preferred channel for media and journalists and conference organizers, as well as executives and investors. So for one, as you look to further expand your influence in general, it's going to be a key channel for you to get on the radar of relevant conference organizers as maybe you look to do more speaking, or relevant media and journalists in the space to be interviewed or quoted or profiled. But then a lot of executives in general, as well as investors and VCs, we find they tend to use Twitter kind of like a newsroom. Rather than following traditional media and journalists, they tend to skew much more towards following other leaders and other executives in their industry. And so I think Twitter's really a great channel for an executive to share relevant articles and trends with a unique insight and point of view to really help showcase their thought leadership and to be looked at as someone to follow around the future of their industry. Also, Twitter's a very open channel, so you could really grow a large and engaged audience. We're also going to talk a little bit further in this presentation about the earned media effect that Twitter has. And then the last channel, which is also our key channel for content, I would say less important than LinkedIn and Twitter, but certainly the third channel by far is Medium, also known as medium.com. Medium is a blog publishing channel. We find that it's got a great audience of senior and C-level executives that share their content there. VCs, investors, founders, entrepreneurs. This is another great channel for you to share longer form original thought leadership, like a blog or thought piece. And we find with Medium, their algorithm tends to really reward engagement and popularity. So if you do post a blog here and it gets a good amount of engagement, Medium will tend to feature that on the homepage, kind of like an editor's pick, where it can then receive much more engagement from there. Now, there's all these other secondary channels, we'll call them, like a personal website. I would recommend for everyone here, at the very least, you should acquire your name, meaning, www.johnsmith.com, markreichel.com. Go and at least acquire your name on GoDaddy or one of these sites where you can buy a domain. Whether or not right now you want to build a personal website or not, but personal websites are great because it's another owned and controlled link for you where people will find you, where you can house all your thought leadership as well. You can have a contact page where people can contact you if they want to meet or for speaking. It'll look very professional and you can highlight your achievements as well. But then there's all these other kind of digital profiles like AngelList and Crunchbase. And these are great channels where you can have an optimized profile with an updated bio, cover image, and you can even link to any of the kind of articles you've been mentioned in or earned media. And these channels will still rank well on Google. So they're more owned and controlled, but you don't need to publish to these channels as consistently. And then there's channels I would recommend you up the privacy settings, like your personal Facebook account or Instagram. Now, Instagram, if you're in the design industry, it makes a lot of sense, right? If you're in a visual industry like that, it can make sense for you. But for the most part, for most executives, I would say this would be a more personal channel where you can up the privacy settings. And then let's talk about content, strategically distributing content and sharing it. Because there's two types of content that I would recommend you share and that we focus on also with our clients. There's original thought leadership, where you can share longer form blogs and original thought pieces. But then there's also what we call news cycle content or industry articles and trends. And the industry articles and trends are very important because this is the weekly content that I would recommend you share on your key social channels. So LinkedIn posts, those shorter form posts, tweets. I would recommend for everyone here sharing relevant articles and trends each week with a unique insight and point of view, and tagging the author and journalist in the post or any business leaders mentioned in the article in the post. What that does is it associates you with a topic, it highlights you as a forward thinker around that topic, and then by tagging the author or journalist or anyone mentioned, they're going to be very likely to engage back with you because they'll be notified as well. And so that weekly content, it keeps you staying top of mind, staying relevant, and associating you with your topics and showing you're on the cusp of innovations in the industry. And then you can share those longer form blogs and thought pieces via LinkedIn articles and on Medium to further lead the conversation in your industry. And in terms of the frequency of how often do you share? Well, for these key channels, one thing to really know is that social media algorithms, they actually reward consistency with visibility. So the more consistently you share content, the more visibility your content and profile will get. On Twitter, we find it's a very fast-paced channel. I would recommend 5 tweets per week to really leverage the frequency and the reward from Twitter's algorithm for visibility. On LinkedIn, it's, again, more professionals, executives. definitely a great channel for you to be active on, but I would recommend 3 posts per week to really leverage the reward from LinkedIn's algorithm for visibility. And then with Medium, at least 2 blogs or thought pieces a year, if you could do these quarterly, but at least two of these a year to really add your own original thought leadership in addition to the insights that you're sharing on a weekly basis. Now, one of the things that I had mentioned before about Twitter, and this really goes for LinkedIn and other channels too, is this kind of earned media effect. We call it also the influence effect. And this is something also that's really important for people to know, because quite often when I've first spoken to an executive, LinkedIn is always the obvious choice to be active on, but sometimes they'll say, oh, why is Twitter important? And besides some of the reasons I mentioned before, preferred channel for media and journalists, conference organizers, and a lot of other executives, Twitter has a very big earned media effect that you can get from the platform. Meaning there's all sorts of publications like Forbes and Inc. and even more industry specific publications, and they'll put out these articles like the top 50 CMOs to follow on Twitter, the top 50 fintech executives to follow on Twitter. They do this for every industry you can imagine. And a lot of our clients that we've seen as we've really focused on building their presence, they tend to get featured on these lists, and it's just great third-party validation and earned media. So as you start to focus deliberately on building your audience and starting to get a large audience on Twitter and a lot of engagement, there's this great earned media and validation you'll get. Also, we found from our work with executives that as you build out your profile on sites like Twitter, and this also goes for LinkedIn, and really grow your audience, you'll notice that a lot of times they'll be reached out to directly from these channels by conference organizers to speak at a conference, or by media and journalists to be interviewed or profiled around an industry article that they're doing. So that whole influence effect and earned media is very powerful as well. And then the last thing I wanted to do here really is, highlight 10 things you should do right now. If you're going to do anything, certainly these are the 10 things I would recommend doing right away. First thing, think about and write down what are those 2 to 3 topics you want to be known for. Procure and optimize your LinkedIn and Twitter profiles. These are going to be the 2 most important by far, but a very close third is Medium, and having the profile there and starting to utilize this as a channel for original thought leadership. Review and manage your privacy settings across the board, because again, your Facebook personal page, that's probably going to be better off where you have the privacy settings set all the way up. Most executives, again, Instagram, probably more private. And so that balance between what's public and private. Begin to share content at least 3 times a week across a minimum of 2 channels. Again, the 2 key ones I would recommend for most is LinkedIn and Twitter, with Medium as a close third. And then this is very important. I didn't really cover this off previously in this presentation in detail, but engage and follow your audience and influencers. Another huge part of what LinkedIn and Twitter and their algorithms reward is sharing content, but also engaging with others' content. So this is what we call at Canary. We call this deliberate growth. So thinking about if you are, if you would benefit from being on the radar of, let's just say, chief marketing officers at large enterprises, there's no reason you shouldn't be connecting in with every CMO in the Fortune 1000, just as an example. And so really start to think about who's your audience and start to actually connect with them and start to comment on their posts. What we also know, again, about these algorithms is when you comment on someone's post, they get notified, and then they're going to be very likely to follow you back and engage with you. So commenting is also going to be very key to softly stay on the radar of particularly key influencers you really want to get on the radar of, over the course of each month. The other key thing is when you start to think about rebuilding and optimizing your profiles, because there's a lot that needs to be done for most executives to clean things up. Their whole LinkedIn, the way the profile's structured, is very important to really strategically optimize the profile so so it gets the most visibility and it establishes authority right away. One of the interesting things we've found is that a cover image of you speaking on stage or speaking on a panel, that actually tends to drive the highest amount of engagement when someone first comes to your profile. It's the first image they see on the page, it's the biggest image, and it really establishes credibility and showcases you as an authority right when someone comes to the profile. Your LinkedIn headline below your name, very important. Don't just keep your leadership title there. Add in the keywords you want to be known for. Your bio, linking to other articles you've been mentioned in or videos of you speaking. Very important in terms of how you structure the profile. Now, when it comes to posting content, we know that images and visuals or video tends to get at least double the amount of engagement on average than just text-based content alone. So I would really recommend sharing not just text-based content, whether that's shorter form LinkedIn posts or tweets or longer form articles, add in images and visuals. And then also, share the love. I think in general, we found that when employees and colleagues and executives are sharing their other peers' work and congratulating them or showcasing some great work done, those pieces tend to get a lot of great engagement. Those people that you mentioned, they're going to engage back, and you'll notice that that type of content does really well and it sets you up. Also, one of the things I would recommend is try out new networks and features. So I'm sure some of you have heard of TikTok because there's a lot of buzz around it. It's certainly not a channel we've found that makes sense for most executives now, but could that change? It could. Always keep up to date on how these channels are evolving. Live streaming is something that we found is really important. Some of you may have noticed that LinkedIn recently launched LinkedIn Live, and so more people are using their live streaming features, which can be very effective, and something that you do and think about in the future after you've kind of built a foundation. And so that's kind of a high-level overview of what I wanted to really take you through. And I would love to answer any questions that anyone has. If you have any questions, please write them in the Q&A bucket because I can certainly answer any questions for you. I hope you found this beneficial. Another thing to mention is everyone, as a thank you for attending this, I'm happy to offer a complimentary analysis of your current online presence and the opportunity to grow it. So we'll follow up and we'll send you a recording of this. And if you're interested, myself or someone on my team, we can take you through a one-on-one analysis of your current presence. And also, if you're interested, we could take you through more details of Canary and how we work with our executives. So feel free to ping me or respond to my follow-up if you're interested in analysis. I'd love to answer some questions now, Michael, if you can read off any of the questions that have been asked.
Yeah, we have at least this one question. So, anonymous attendee asks, what shouldn't we be sharing right now? What's appropriate for LinkedIn versus what's not?
Yeah, it's a great question. And one thing I would recommend, not just on LinkedIn, but any profiles that you're public on, is I would recommend staying away from politics and religion for sure. Your public facing profiles, think of those as your professional facing profiles. So you should focus the content around your 2 to 3 key topics you want to be known for. Out of those 3 key topics, 2 of them can be very professional facing. So let's say that you're a CMO, just as an example, the future of marketing, leadership, transformational leadership. These are just examples of potential topics, right? And one humanizes you, this kind of leadership aspect, and one is focused more on your professional facing pillar. So certainly stay away from topics that are extremely polarizing, like religion and politics, on your public facing channels like LinkedIn or Twitter or Medium. Great question.
We have a couple more questions coming in. One saying, have you been able to quantify the ROI of investing in a service like Canary over time?
Yeah, it's a great question. So basically what we found is that for a lot of the executives that we work with at Canary, and I can speak for Canary, and a lot of professionals in general, I think that you talk to who have invested in their personal brand and their online presence, it has a huge effect in terms of overall career acceleration and growth, whether that's in their current roles, whether that's attracting opportunities, or whether that's business growth or things like attracting more speaking engagements, getting on the radar of relevant media and journalists, and overall business development. And so the overall ROI, I mean, we're tracking a lot of the key social KPIs like audience growth, engagement, the type of audience that's following you, the key influencers, how you benchmark against your peers. But we find as you start to focus on your personal brand more, it's really an investment in yourself and your career, and building and growing and continuing to accelerate that. And the reason that we've grown so much as a company is because it's a win-win in terms of your company will also benefit significantly from your influence. So it's a win-win for both you and your personal brand as an executive, and also for the organization you're a part of.
Great. So we have another question. If I'm not interested in connecting with journalists or event organizers, is Twitter still a good channel for me to be posting on?
Yes, great question. I certainly think absolutely still a great channel. While that is the preferred channel for those two types of audiences, Twitter is still, first off, it ranks extremely well in Google and in search engines. Second off, there's still a lot of executives and VCs and investors and in kind of influencers in general that are active on Twitter. So it's another great owned and controlled channel where you can have a voice in the industry and you can use to shape how people perceive you and what you're associated with. And the reality is, while it may seem superficial to some, when you have a very large audience and thousands of followers and you get a lot of engagement on your posts, there is this perception of influence that certainly goes up. And so again, while that might seem superficial, it makes an impact on the overall perception of influence that people have of you.
This is probably going to be the last question we have. So we have the question that asks, should I accept all connection requests that come my way?
Yeah, that's a great question. We get that quite often. So what I would recommend is not necessarily accepting all connection requests, but accept, first off, I guess everyone but definitely accept anyone and be deliberate about connecting in with people you want to know. I usually get that question where someone will say, I get all these connection requests and I usually only accept people I know. Well, that's great, but there's probably a lot of people that you want to get on the radar of that you should definitely accept their connection requests, and you should actually be deliberate about connecting with them. So the answer to that question is certainly if you're getting a connection request from someone and you just have no reason, not sure why they're connecting with you at all, and you think they might just be reaching out to kind of spam you with sales stuff, no, I don't think you need to connect with them. In fact, one of the features of LinkedIn that a lot of people don't know about is people can still follow you on LinkedIn. If you start to post content, if someone really likes your content, they can actually follow you and still see your content without being a connection. So these people who try to connect with you that you're not sure if you should connect back with, if they really want to connect with you or engage with you, they'll follow you. But overall, I would recommend connecting in with people or people you want to know, and then be very deliberate around connecting in with other executives that you do want to get on the radar of as well. That's very important. Any other questions, Michael?
No, I think that's probably going to be a good time to call it here.
Perfect. Well, I want to thank everyone, first off, for taking the time out of their day and joining. Again, I'm going to follow up with everyone. I'm going to send through the recording. And also to everyone who joined, happy to offer that online presence analysis of your personal online presence and specific recommendations for you as kind of a thank you for joining. So feel free to reach out and we'll be in touch soon. Appreciate it again and have a great day.